Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the second decan of Cancer. Hope that you're having a wonderful holiday week out there, however you are celebrating. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon as I'm recording this. We're going to take a deep dive into the upcoming full moon in Cancer that's coming up a week from this coming Saturday on January 3rd. One of our first lunations, or I guess our first lunation of 2026. So we're going to be diving into this year ahead. We're going to be showing you how it's going to unfold over the next few weeks as well, with some Cazimis of Mars and Venus. We're going to be talking about the end of the malefic enclosure of Jupiter. We're going to be breaking down the significations of the sign of Cancer and the sign of Capricorn. And just spending some time together. So if you have any questions or if you have anything that is on your mind, put it in the chat. Let me know that you're here, and we'd love to hear from you today. So a couple things before we get rolling here, a couple announcements. Of course, it is the final days of 2025, and you can find me over at spencermichaud.com, and there are still some opportunities to sign up for a reading with the 2025 offerings and prices. So if you like what you see over there on the Book Now button, make sure to get in under the wire before things change. Like, this is the inevitability of life, is sometimes things change, and there might be some repurposing of readings, some new things coming. But if you want to get some guidance for 2026 and the early months ahead, go book now at spencermichaud.com. Also have a webinar store over there where you can purchase webinars to help support the channel. These are webinars that are designed to be kind of evergreen content for you that you can refer back to over and over and over again. If you like how I do things with the decans and with the tarot and the fixed stars, I have a decan series that you can learn all about the 36 decans, the 10-degree sections of each 12, of each 30-degree sign, the 12 30-degree signs. And each of those is about 3 to 4 hours long, with jam-packed full of information about the tarot, mythology, the decans, the spirits that inhabit those decans, the fixed stars that you can draw upon, all these different lenses. I also have a series with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, called Dignity and Devotion, where we break down the significations of the 7 traditional planets and teach you how to create a devotional practice with those and how to make elections for any magical petitions that you might want to do to those planets. So check those out as well. And then finally, I have a Stars and Cards webinar where I talk about the esoteric connections between the tarot and astrology, of which there are many. So go check that out at the store. Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, we've got some new stuff, some exciting stuff at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. This is the new Magnificent Money Oil, which is an exalted Jupiter in Cancer election. An election that doesn't come around very often. Jupiter is in Cancer once every 12 years or so. So this is one where it's a classic conjure abundance oil. I believe it is a Camilla oil, and really great stuff. I'm wearing it today. It just helps with all forms of abundance, not just money, but abundance of relationships, abundance of time, abundance of freedom, abundance of health, all of these things that we can consider as wealth. And Jupiter in Cancer is great for bringing those things to us. Jupiter, the greater benefic, helping us to energize to the qualities of having enough, right? Of having more than we need, even, so that we can share with others through philanthropy, through just feelings of generosity and reciprocity. Great oil for that. She also has an exalted Jupiter, a straight exalted Jupiter oil over there as well. So this is part of a series where there are going to be extra things that are going to be unfolding, like subsets that are going to be unfolding over the weeks and months ahead. So take advantage of that. Go follow her at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. Really great stuff. Handcrafted goods that are lovingly prepared and magically elected. Okay, you can also find us over at our newsletter, Spencer Michaud Astrology newsletter, where you will get some updates on Third Coast Mojo as well. So make sure that you sign up for that. Great way to keep in touch and to know when we're going live here, to know what kind of topics we're going to be talking about. It also helps you to know what kind of releases Third Coast Mojo is putting out. And if you want a little bit of a bonus, there's a song of the week where we talk about, it's just some kind of song that is inspiring me for the week. it's a great way to get kind of just some background information on that. This week's song of the week was I tried to find a holiday tune for all of you, and I'm not a huge like holiday music buff, but I couldn't pass up Someday at Christmas, the Jackson 5 version. I love the Stevie Wonder version, great song, but the Jackson 5 version just has this bass line in it. It's just amazing. It's so funky. Worth your time for the bass line alone. Those early 70s Motown's recordings were just incredible. So check that out. Sign up for the newsletter. Go listen to Someday at Christmas by Jackson 5. Okay, friends, the last thing I have for you here today is if you want to support the channel, if you're feeling generous in the season of giving, you can go over to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel, a supporter of the channel. You can also support the channel today while I'm live on YouTube with a super chat with a little $sign in the chat, or after the fact with a super thanks. So I'm just really grateful for all of you here today. We've had a lot of growth on this channel over the course of 2025, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow the channel with you and to provide more value and more wisdom and just more connection. So thank you so much for all your support, and appreciate everyone here. The easiest thing you can do to support the channel today, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends, hype it on YouTube, all of the things that you can do to kind of spread the word, spread the joy, spread the information far and wide. All right, friends. Announcements done. Let's see. I'm going to welcome some of my friends in here today. Got some people stopping in. Let's see who we got. Rachel Fletcher is here. Says hello from Roanoke, Virginia. Nice to see you, Rachel. Happy holidays to you. Hope you're having a wonderful post-solstice week and everything's going well your way, my friend. Solede's Gateway is here. What's up, Devin? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Joining us, I believe, from Portland, Oregon. Always nice to see you in the chat, and lovely conversations Devin and I have been having recently about the nature of time. Pacific Northwest of Turtle Island. There you go. Perfect. Let's see. Pea Shooter is here. Says, well, Pea Shooter, you need to subscribe. You got to subscribe if you want to get the notifications on and whatnot. So here we go. All right. So let's talk about the full moon in Cancer too. What do you say? So this is, let me bring this to the screen. I'll share my screen. I'll just kind of show you what I'm looking at here. So here is the full moon in Cancer. And we've got an opposition, which is what we always have with full moons, between the sun and the moon. And what we have here is a big stack up in Capricorn. We've got a big stellium, okay? 3 or more planets in a sign, I think, is often considered a stellium. Some people say 4, but we have 4 here. So we have the sun, Venus, Mars, and Mercury all hanging out in Capricorn. 3 of those 4 planets in the second decan of Capricorn, and they're opposing the moon in the second decan of Cancer. Now, Cancer is also traveling with a friend, the greater benefic, Jupiter, as we were talking about earlier, retrograde Jupiter in Cancer 3. All of these planets in Capricorn are going to make oppositions with Jupiter in Cancer 3 and 2, respectively, over the course of the next few weeks. So we're going to be trying to balance out somewhat opposing energies. Now, the interesting thing when we get to sort of a polarity is that sometimes things at the opposite extremes have similar root motivations, even though they might be doing things in a very different way. And I think the Cancer and Capricorn axes, some of the root motivations, a lot of it is security. Cancer can try to create that security through its emotional connections, emotional protection, the protection of the family, the protection of kin. Capricorn sometimes does that through resources, through the protection of status within society, of the ability to be respected by your peers and things of that nature. So how do we balance those two things out? How do we balance out our desire to be validated socially, materially, with our need to be validated in our personal relationships and emotionally? And those are some of the things we're going to be trying to balance out with the Cancer moon. We will talk about kind of the more in-depth viewpoint of that as we talk about the decans in particular. But a couple big picture thoughts that we have here, right? So this full moon in Cancer too, 13 degrees of Cancer on the 3rd of January. Jupiter, of course, co-present with the moon. Venus, Mars, and Mercury co-present with the sun. Venus and Mars are getting ready to renew. This is a big part of this full moon because both Venus and Mars are going to be going into a condition called cazimi, right? In the heart of the sun. Cazimi means in the heart. So Venus and Mars are about to be renewed in the heart of the sun. Think of that sun as a giant furnace, right? That is going to burn off the old significations, the old body, the old dross, the stuff that's keeping us down, and it's going to ignite a new sense of purpose for both of those planets. And that's going to have a lot of reverberations for different parts of our life. Venus, of course, is responsible for both the Taurus and Libra topics that we have in our respective charts. So if you want to understand what Venus renewing is going to bring you, take a look at where Taurus and Libra and the numbered houses that they fall in and learn about the significations of that. So like, for example, in this very arbitrary Sagittarius rising chart that you see on the screen, Venus is responsible for both the 6th house and the 11th house. So a Sagittarius rising may be getting renewed with their sense of community, with their sense of being able to do hard work within the community, or their sense of health and how they take care of themselves. Now, Mars is also going to be renewed around this full moon, or slightly afterwards. We'll talk about that. Mars is going to be responsible for your Aries and your Scorpio topics. So in this arbitrary Sagittarius rising chart, Aries is on the 5th house, and Scorpio is on the 12th house. So a renewal with our sense of creativity, a renewal in a sense of our relationship to children or children of the mind, and then possibly also how we seek solitude, how we seek connection in those liminal spaces, with it also ruling the 12th house. And all of these things are going to be focused through the axis of the 2nd and the 8th, right? The axis of supporting ourselves in a very personal way with the 2nd house and relying on the resources of others with the 8th house. So all of these things are a big matrix of meaning that we have to sort of kind of work through and create a personal narrative around. So Mars and Venus getting ready to renew, an important part of this full moon. Now also, Mars and Venus will be back in bounds. We start this lunation with Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the moon all out of bounds. And that's a condition where planets are sort of moving outside the normally state-sanctioned movement of the sun, right? They're moving in a relationship that is outside the normal declination path of the sun. Now, a way to simplify that is these planets aren't necessarily following the normal rules that they would follow in a society, right? So they may be working under their own desires, under their own powers, beholden to no one. And that can be very positive in some circumstances, and that can be very difficult in others, depending how we utilize that energy. So this is sort of a think outside the box full moon, but we've been doing that for the last couple weeks, and now we're going to start to be able to solidify some of those things as these planets go back into bounds after the full moon. So those are some of the bigger picture thoughts with this particular full moon. Let's kind of take a look back in the chat, see if we've got some more friends joining us here. Let's see. Across the hedge, what's up, Kai? Nice to see you. Hi from Kansas. There seems to be 2 live streams, one landscape and one in vertical format. Yes, and that is by design, Kai. We have one that is being streamed in the normal horizontal format on YouTube, and we also have one that is for mobile phones. So if you're following along on your mobile phone, you might be able to see that in a different little perspective. So you have the option now. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Let's see, goodbye. And also goodbye. And then one more, see you later. Okay, so one of the things that we do in this chat is we practice kindness, consideration, and if you can't follow by those rules here, gonna be out. So let's keep going. What do you say? So here we go. We're going to start talking about Cancer and Capricorn. The first thing we want to look at is the Sun in Capricorn 2. And when we have the Sun in Capricorn 2, we are going to take a look at the deck and flash card that I have associated with that, and I'll break it down for you. So with the Sun in Capricorn 2, we see something that is associated with the Three of Pentacles. The Three of Pentacles is a card syncretized with the face ruler Mars and in the sign of Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So we can also think about this as a Mars and Capricorn type of energy. And Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So the Three of Pentacles is called the Lord of Material Works, or the Lord of Works. Austin Coppock, in his excellent book, 36 Faces, calls it the pyramid. We have a spirit in this decan called Hygeia, and Hygeia was associated with health. So one of the things that we're looking at here with Capricorn 2 is we are trying to build some kind of ornate structure, okay? So with Capricorn 2, we are dealing with architectural designs, blueprints. And I always start with where the sun is in a full moon, because the sun is showing us the intention that we have going out into the world. The moon is sort of the manifestation of it. The moon is the body. The sun was associated with the spirit, the moon, the body. We're collecting light into the moon. So we have this intention of what we're trying to achieve collectively, but we have to utilize the energy of the moon to bring it into manifestation. So here our intentions are ambitious projects, daunting tasks, gathering resources, and support. Support is important because you can see in this card, the Three of Pentacles, people are cooperating, working together to build an ornate cathedral. We have the artist, we have the government official, and we have the clergy. So there is this cooperation inherent that we're trying to get to build something ornate. Now, this is an interesting part that I was reading in Susie Chang's book, 36 Secrets. She talks a lot about the Kabbalistic tree of life, and the threes in the tarot are associated with Bina in Asya, or Bina in general. This particular card is Bina in Asya, and Bina is a Saturn-ruled face, or a Saturn-ruled Sephira, more accurately. So we have this kind of triple planetary energy here, or I guess duality, you could say more accurately, because we have a Saturn-ruled sign, we have a Saturn Sephira in the Kabbalistic tree of life, and a Mars-ruled face. So hard work, toil, castrating possibilities into form. So this is one of the things Saturn's really good at, is like castrating all of the different directions we could go and then kind of bringing it in to manifestation. We also are associating this decan with the proper maintenance of our body and our mental health. To be able to do something great or grand or ambitious, we need to have the energy to do so. There are also significations in this decan of the assembly line, the means of production. How are we going to get the work done? The challenges with this decan are sometimes we will try to do something too ambitious, that we will fall victim to the concept of hubris, trying to do something that is beyond our capabilities or even beyond the natural order or beyond the divine, right? The divine natural order. And this was something that was very punishable in ancient civilizations by the gods. They punished hubris. So we have to be careful that we're not trying to build something that is too ambitious that could lead to a breakdown of our mental and emotional health. Okay, so questions to ask yourself with the sun in Capricorn 2. What resources do you need to build your ornate structures? How can you gather support for your vision, right? Oftentimes, the most amazing things that we create are not just individual efforts. They're team efforts. They're communal efforts. I've been reading a lot about how to build community, local community, and be able to support one another through sharing. And this decan can show us the way of how to be able to band together with our local communities to do more as a group than we could as individuals. You could ask yourself if this plan is in service of the self or the collective. Oftentimes, we will have more success if what we are doing serves more people than just ourselves. It will garner much better will with our fellow humans than if it's just something that's self-serving, where that particular hubris might lead to a downfall, because people might want to see us fall from grace if our plans aren't in service of a collective need rather than just an individual one. So that's when you can ask yourself, is the project practical, a Capricornian concern, or hubristic, one where you're trying to overshoot the mark a little bit? Are you trying to build a Tower of Babel? An interesting theme with this decan, and we see this in the Tower card in tarot, is trying to build a tower to heaven in that biblical story through material means, trying to reach a spiritual ideal through a material kind of edifice construction. Now, I have a little bit of pushback on that on some level. I do think that it does accurately represent a hubristic vision. I will push back in saying that there has to be a separation between the physical and the spiritual. All of the reading that I've been doing, all of the kind of intuition I have, is as a somewhat of a mystical practitioner, seeing that it is all one, that this separation between spirit and matter is one of the things that has actually led us to the abuses of this planet and of each other. So I think that being able to reunify spirit and matter, I think, is an important mystical endeavor, and one that will, I think, help lead to better outcomes moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean that we try to pursue materiality at the expense of its sacredness. I think that's the difference. How do we make whatever relationship we have with the material world sacred, rather than saying that the material is evil, right? How do we make it sacred? How do we cherish the things that we have, the things that we engage with, the things that we're stewards of? How do we cherish our relationships? How do we cherish these bodies that we inhabit so that we take care of them rather than abuse them? And so I think this reunification of body and spirit is actually very important in Capricorn, rather than just thinking of it from a strictly Tower of Babel biblical sense. And finally, how can you take care of your body while you toil, right? That Hygeia daimon is very important as we're moving forward through these significations. All right, let's see here. Marietta's here. What's up, Marietta? Nice to see you. Hope you're having a good holiday, my friend. Good afternoon to you. Marietta says, I hope your Christmas was warm and filled with kindness and love. It was. I will say that, Marietta. I connected with some family members I hadn't talked to in a while, and that was really nice. I talked to an aunt of mine that I just life had kind of separated us, and we hadn't really caught up in a while, and spent a good hour and a half on the phone with her, and it really did fill my heart up. It made me feel really wealthy in relationships, and finding someone that I had good memories with from my childhood Christmases and being able to reconnect was really powerful. So yeah, I did have a great day, and Tanya and I went for a great walk out in the woods at our local botanical gardens and connected with nature, and it was kind of the perfect day, to be honest with you. Stephen is here. What's up, Stephen? Says happy upcoming transits. Happy holidays. Yes, happy holidays to you, Stephen. Hope you're doing well, my friend, over there on the west side. Bina is the third Sephir, right? Exactly. So we've got Bina associated with Saturn, and it brings structure. It brings form to these energies. So we'll talk about that too when we talk about the Three of Cups associated with the moon in Cancer too. Yes. Mutual aid. That's right. Exactly. I've been reading a lot about that lately. I gave you good book recommendations. This is Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, and Society in the Age of Transition by Charles Eisenstein. This is sort of my holiday reading lately. I've been imagining a new kind of way of exchange, one that is less exploitive of each other and one that's more cooperative. So there's some really great ideas in that. I can also recommend a guy, Tom Llewellyn, who was recently on the podcast that Tanya shared with me, Team Human, with Douglas Rushkoff. So go check that out too. Tom Llewellyn. I believe he has he has a really awesome website that talks about these types of issues. And these are really important ones for Cancer and Capricorn axis. So this is the, shareable.net is a great one to imagine how to build these kind of mutual aid relationships with others and with your community. Yes, more metaphysical. A healthy connection between the seen and unseen, exactly. Rachel says, Spencer, I like how you frame the Tower of Babel story. Otherwise, it can be a spiritual bypass. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was just something about it that when I was starting to read more of these ancestral ways of viewing the world, but pre-Descartes, the Cartesian separation of mind and body, that was just started rubbing me the wrong way, you know. And I think that reconnecting those, while also keeping the spirit of that story, but without the separation of an ensouled world, I think is very important, because in ancient indigenous cultures, they didn't necessarily see matter and spirit as separate things. Everything had a soul. And I think that starting to connect those two things again is going to be the really important work of this full moon, if we're being honest, because we have a material sign, Capricorn. We have an emotional, quote unquote, spiritual sign in Cancer, which I don't think is a proper demarcation, because all of these signs are spiritual. All of these planets, all of these energies are part of a unified whole. But we're trying to figure out how to balance these things with the types of experiences that we have. All right. Ooh, cellular DNA repair, it says Marietta. That's cool. Yes, I'm happy. It was a good day. It was a good day. Appreciate. I hope you had a great day too, Marietta. Katie Loves Pink is here. Hi, Spencer. Just popping in on my drive to work. I got it right this time. I didn't say Katie Loves Spink, which I did before. So welcome, Katie. And I love that you're popping in. And thank you for letting me know that you're here. It's really nice when all my friends let me know that you're here. Love it. Devin says, I am located, therefore I am. Tyson Yunkaporta, another author that talks about the ensoulment, the re-ensoulment, the re-enchantment of the world through the Australian Indigenous lens. So he has a great book called Sand Talk that I think, Devin, you turned me on to that book. So we've been sharing resources in a communal way for a long time, friend. Okay, so let's keep going. So we've got this Capricorn 2 sun, and keep in mind that not only is the sun moving through Capricorn here, both Venus and Mars are also moving through this decan. So Mars is extremely powerful in this decan. Mars is going to give us the ability to work very hard and long hours if we take care of our body. Venus is going to be bringing us the resources we need. You know what's really cool? When I look at this card, the 3 of Pentacles, and then I look at the chart, I sort of see the 3 figures in the 3 of Pentacles. So if you look at this, you've got Venus, the artist. You've got the, I don't know, the clergy with the sun, or even you could call it the government. I don't know, whoever role we could see. Mars is going to play the other role of the maybe they're the government, I guess. Maybe it's a clunky metaphor. But what I do like is that we have 3 figures that are traveling together and trying to cooperate to bring us the ability to create an ornate structure. Okay. So let's keep going. And let's talk about the host first, the host of the sun, because the moon is in its own domicile. Let's talk about the host of the sun. Host of the sun is Saturn, and it's going to be sextile. So what is motivating our solar consciousness at this full moon? Well, in this case, it is Saturn that is traveling with Neptune in the final degrees of Pisces. And let's just take a look at that Piscean energy. So this energy, or decan of Pisces, we have the 10 of Cups, sort of this idealistic vision, this rainbow consciousness. Mars is the face ruler here. So this is interesting because it's a Jupiter sign, and it is has a mask that is very martial. So one of the things that is elusive in this decan, and Pisces is always kind of elusive, but this card kind of hides some of the sacrifice necessary to try to achieve this vision. So this is one of satisfaction, the Lord of satiety, the Lord of perfected success. It has various names, but Austin Coppock kind of touches on this Mars part of it, a cup of blood, in his book 36 Faces. And he mentions the daimon spirit, Elpis, which translates to hope. Elpis is part of the Pandora's jar story, where Pandora unleashed a lot of the ills onto the world that we experience as human beings: death, old age, war, famine, etc. And hope remained behind the lid of the jar to help human beings sort of get through some of those things. So we have Saturn trying to attempt to make our dreams real. We have talked a lot on the channel about December being a time of visioning, a time of trying to get clear on your why, so that when January rolls around, you can start to make that vision real. So I hope that over the course of the last few weeks, you've been getting clear about what your values are. You've been making your vision boards. You've been putting out intentions into the world. You've been maybe thinking about the best possible outcome, right? We will have time to determine whether those visions are realistic and practical or whether they're hubristic. But when we're in the visioning phase, we want to put our attention to the manifestation that we want to see. And that this can be a really important part of Saturn in this decan. It also can make us highly aware of some of the swings of emotion, the heights of ecstasy and the depths of this despair. Because when we are moving through a place like Pisces, we have removed some of the boundaries between us and others, emotionally and otherwise. And it's very easy to take on the weight of the world. So this Saturn in Pisces 3 can also lead to a feeling of like just taking on all of the challenges of being human and being in a community with other human beings. So this is something where we are drawing upon our visionary qualities to create, to manifest. Saturn does have a positive sextile relationship to the Sun, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. So this is something where there is an ease of interaction between them. So that is a really positive part of this full moon, in my opinion. Okay. Let's see. Yes, and it's Venus decan by triplicity, the Capricorn 2 decan. Yep, exactly. There we go. Yeah, we have two different systems where we're kind of ascertaining whether what planetary ruler is part of the decanic energy. So we have the descending Chaldean order, which is related to the speed of the planets. So in that system, it is a Mars-ruled decan. In the triplicity method, you have one planet for each sign of the same element. And you start with the planet that is related to the sign itself. So I guess in this case, it would probably be Saturn, right? And then we'd go next to Taurus, Saturn ruling Capricorn. Then Taurus would be the planetary ruler, Venus here. And then the third decanic ruler would be Mercury. So interesting way to look at things through different lenses. Devin says, hope is also energy or consciousness that causes us to hold on to forms beyond their actual form. Yeah, and that could be positive or negative, right? Sometimes hope is an aimless thing, but it also is a sort of a foundation for faith, right? Being able to hold on to an ideal when we can't really see the manifestation, and to be able to create and go into those liminal spaces of our mind, and to be able to pull out those physical manifestations. Sometimes it starts with a vision. Sometimes it starts with an ideal. And I think those things can be really helpful at this particular lunation. Okay, so let's talk about this moon in the second decan of Cancer. All right, so here we see the Three of Cups, and we have these three lovely graces that are toasting one another, surrounded by the abundance of summer. One of the tensions that we're holding at this full moon is the Capricorn significations associated with winter in the Northern Hemisphere, where it's a little bit harder to find sustenance on the face of the earth during this period of time. We have to be a little bit more hardened. We might have to eat some tough roots, have some soup, have some things that are a little hardier to get us through the day. We might have to rely on our stores from the summertime if we were wise enough to put something away to get us through the entirety of winter. We may have to rely on our community if we had, let's say that we were a farmer and our particular set of crops failed. We might have to rely on our community to support us so that we can get through together. Now with Cancer, we have this peak abundance of summer. The Three of Cups, also a Bina Sephira, right? Also kind of has this Saturnine element to it. And that really shows us these significations that Austin Coppock would dub a walled garden. Okay, so we've got the Lord of Abundance in Book T and Book of Thoth. So things are flourishing, but it's like this great, beautiful garden. But because of the Bina Saturnine quality of that Kabbalistic tree of life, it's contained, or it needs a container. It needs something to keep out the forces that would threaten it coming to full fruition. So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot with this full moon is we may have an ambitious project. We may have a vision of what we want to create tangibly, but we need to protect it. We need to figure out how to let it grow at its own pace without forcing it into manifestation. We need to be able to nurture that vision to its fullest capacity. And we do that sometimes through not sharing it prematurely. One of the things that Cancer too, and I have experience in this decan because my son is in Cancer too. It's something that this is a motivating kind of energy for me. I don't often share things before they are ripened, right? Think about a caterpillar in its cocoon. You can't cut a caterpillar out of its cocoon prematurely, or it's not going to be fully formed into the butterfly. It's not going to fly. So we have to be patient with this decan. We have to be patient and protect what we're trying to do from the forces that would undermine it, from the forces that would say, that's crazy. That'll never work, right? That's foolhardy, right? We have to protect it from those voices. We have to say, we have to only share it with people that are supportive enough to see that vision into fruition. Not everyone's going to understand our vision. Sometimes people, I was joking around with my friend earlier today, sometimes we slightly neurodivergent folks have our own hyperfixations, right? we're just trying to navigate the roller coaster of those fixations. And when two hyperfixations meet with one another, sometimes we're not able to give as much attention to one or the other that we would normally be able to do if we weren't like in the throes of our own ecstasy. So I apologize, friend, if I haven't given enough attention to your very cool idea. But Devin's got a really cool idea he's working on. I won't spoil it because it needs to be protected. But I want to encourage those types of things, right? Encourage those experimentations and encourage the ability to protect them until they are fully formed before we share them with the more harsher critics in the world that might cause us to have doubt. So how can we as a community create a vision, start taking the tangible steps, but also protect it through our ability to understand that things take time, that manifestation takes time, that becoming that fully formed butterfly in the cocoons of our lives and the walled gardens of our life takes some protection. Okay, to be able to create a safe space like we hopefully have here in our live stream, sometimes we have to weed the garden a little bit. Sometimes there's folks that would threaten that safety for one another, and we have to do our moderation and things of that nature. So this is true in our personal lives too. Sometimes you have to weed out forces that aren't healthy or that aren't supportive. This is an excellent decan to understand family karmic patterns as well. The spirit in this decan is Heracles or Hercules. And Heracles is of course, the mythological hero that was tested by Hera, his stepmother, basically. You know, she drove him to madness. He committed the sin of patricide, like murdering of his own family, and then had to be punished for those by going through these 12 labors. Now, all of these, both the driving to madness, the actions that came after that, and the labors for redemption were all set up by Heracles' stepmother, Hera, as really through no fault of his own. He didn't choose necessarily to be born to Zeus and to a paramour of Zeus. A lot of this was Hera's vengeance, right? This punishment for really not for Heracles himself, but to Zeus. So sometimes this is a great way of thinking about these family patterns that are passed down from parent to child. they're not necessarily the fault of the child. They're just kind of this remnant from these other relationships. And it can be so difficult when we are in places of trauma, when we're raised in traumatic situations, to not feel like we are at fault for some of those things, because oftentimes children can't ascertain all of these more complex relationships between the adults in their life, and they trust with very implicit trust in those figures, almost to a deified status. So you might be looking back on your own family patterns, on your own inherited stories around this full moon in Cancer as well, and seeing how it shaped you, seeing how it led to the choices that you've made in your life. And are those choices based on fear that you inherited? Are those choices based on communal values that you inherited? And how do you shift them if they're not bringing you the manifestations that you want? How do we change the narrative? How do we learn a new way of doing something that can lead to the happiness that I think most people on this planet desire? So a really interesting way of looking at this through our inherited narratives and stories and beliefs, really. Okay. Terry is here. Says Terry Aquarius says hello. What's up, Terry Aquarius? Nice to see you, friend. Hope things are going well your way, my friend. Okay. Devin is laughing. Says thank you. You are my walled garden. I'm happy to be that for you, my friend. And thank you for the ability to bounce ideas off of you. Like Devin and I have a nice kind of reciprocal relationship where we're testing out some of our ideas in the safe space. And it's nice to have friends like that. It's nice to have those relationships where we don't necessarily feel judged, right? Where we can kind of experiment without necessarily someone being like, that's crazy, you're an idiot. Like even if we have some healthy skepticism, we try to test these things over time with our personal experiences, and having a community to do that with can be really valuable. And it's a real gift that you give to one another. Okay. So we've got our moon in Cancer too. Now it's in its own domicile. So we don't have a secondary host for this. The only secondary host we could potentially consider is its exaltation lord, which is Jupiter, and it's in its own exaltation in Cancer. So it's traveling not only in its own domicile, but it's traveling with its exaltation lord as well. To me, that means that we really have a very juiced up moon, right? We have a moon that is very fertile. And even though we are in a northern hemisphere time of the year where we may have a little bit tougher time, there might be a little bit more scarcity, we may be forced to rely on our own toughness, there is communal support out there. There is softness. There is emotional support. There is community there for us if we open ourselves to it. And I just think that's a really incredible opportunity. I was watching the most Capricorn thing happened around the solstice. I was watching a sports game, and right after the sports game, 60 Minutes came on. I'm not usually someone that just watches 60 Minutes, but I was fascinated because the first story that came on was one about a Sherpa in Nepal, and he was climbing mountains. He was the youngest Sherpa to ever climb Mount Everest. He had climbed all these amazingly tall mountains faster than any other mountaineer in his very young state, right? He was 19 years old. It was really quite incredible. He was an Aries sun, by the way, so really like pioneering spirit. But I was like, this is the most Capricorn story ever. This just surviving harsh conditions. Like, it's hard to breathe at elevation. Like, there's no food anywhere. You have to carry everything that will sustain you on your back, and that toughens you up, right? But I was also quite taken aback by the communal support that I saw in this story. At every point, there was a temple. There was a Buddhist temple that this young mountaineer would stop at to receive blessings and prayers as protection as he embraced the spirit of the mountain, as he tried to connect with that harsh spirit that could end his life and has ended many lives. So I thought that was a beautiful kind of manifestation of not only the solstice, but the communal support that we can expect with Cancer as well. All right. Yes, this is really the only full moon like this for another 12 years, right? With the moon traveling with Jupiter, because Jupiter's cycle, it goes in 12-year increments exactly. Okay, so let's start looking at the types of things that we might see as this unfolds. What do you say? We'll bring our chart back up to the screen. And the first thing that we see on the 6th is Venus's cazimi. So we're going to show you sort of how some of these things are going to unfold over the next couple weeks up until the new moon in Capricorn 3. Okay. So Venus cazimi, we've talked about that a little bit, but you can see this here, 16 degrees of Capricorn. Okay. This is when Venus becomes renewed in the heart of the sun. Specifically look towards the Taurus and Libra topics in your life. They are going to be connected to Venus. One of the fundamental techniques associated with traditional or Hellenistic astrology is the guest-host relationship. And that means that the house that we find, or the sign, is a temple or a land that is hosted by a particular planet. So in this case, Saturn is Saturn's land. He is the steward of that particular temple. Okay. Venus is the steward of the temple of Taurus and the temple of Libra. So it is responsible for providing experiences for those particular topics. That's what we're really looking at, is what kind of experiences are we going to be having? So new starts with Venus cazimi and new ambitious projects that could help us feel a sense of birth or rebirth in those topics. Now, the other interesting thing that happens around that time on the 7th is that Venus and Mars are coming together on the 7th. It's about 17 degrees of Capricorn. And with Venus and Mars coming together, there is this experience of having the resources you need and the energy to do something meaningful with them. Okay, the energy to be able to take those valuable communal resources and bring them into some new form, to create from that form, to build an ornate structure, to build a new goal, to build a new, I don't know, pyramid, I guess you could say, right? New cathedral. So a powerful moment where energy and intention is well resourced, well funded, right? Well, like, okay, we have everything we need to build. We have all the materials that we need to build. Now, the other cool thing about that is an ending of the malefic enclosure of Jupiter. For the final few weeks of December and the first week of January, Jupiter has been enclosed by both Saturn and Mars. So this is what this looks like. This is a traditional astrology technique, a Hellenistic technique, where you see the planet casting its ray on one side of the planet while Saturn is casting its ray, and Mars casting its ray on the other side. When the two malefic planets, Saturn and Mars, are casting those rays on either side of any planet, in this case Jupiter, it makes that planet feel like it is being besieged, right? Like it's got its back against the wall. It's hard for it to do its intended experience for us as planetary natives that are inheriting some of those energies. So this is an ending to that. This is an ending of our feelings of frustration. And there will always be feelings of frustration that cycle back around, but of this particular moment of frustration, where we might start to be able to see hope on the horizon. We might be able to see our way forward of how to create abundance without necessarily having it be at someone else's expense, which is a signification of Jupiter in Cancer 3. Okay. So an important moment, not only for Venus and Mars coming together, but for sort of releasing Jupiter from its challenges. And the reason that's happening is because once Venus and Mars come together, okay, we're going to see Venus starting to cast its ray in between. Okay, so this is really an interesting technique, because now Venus at 19 degrees, you can see here on the outside, is casting its ray in between Saturn and Jupiter. So it is sort of breaking it up. So all of those resources, support, the ability to gain the expertise of our friends, our community, our teachers, our students, all of those things can help us to feel like we are creating abundance. Now, on that same day, let's go back to the 7th again. We have the moon making its first aspect. And I will go to the exact aspect here. I think this is at 8 degrees. So here is the moon at 8 degrees of Virgo. Now, this is an interesting technique. This is a technique where the moon is making its first aspect after being released from the bond. And what that means is that when the moon and the sun are either conjoined or opposed to one another, there is this sort of holding pattern. The moon was traditionally considered a manifesting, like music box cylinder that was striking the keys of these other planets and bringing things into physical being. When the sun and the moon were tightly conjoined, the sun is kind of invisible at that new moon phase, and then there's another reason why it's held in check with the opposition as well. So we have this energy of now the moon becomes visible, right? Or in this case, now the moon is disseminating its light. It's not just about the realizations that we're having at the full moon. It's like, what are we going to do with these realizations? Are we going to be able to share this wisdom with others? So now with the moon making this first aspect at 8 degrees of Virgo, now we have to learn the skills necessary to bring that vision into manifestation. Now, the moon is also going to be conjoining the south node around this period of time. You can see here this little U shape, south node. So we may have to let go of previous methods that we have done things. Okay, this is hard for a lot of us who are kind of earthy in nature. We tend to want to repeat successes that we've had in the past. The challenge with that is that every moment is unique. Every new day is a new challenge. And sometimes what worked well for you in the past is not the right method or tool that you need in the future or in the present. And that can be really tough because we can get really attached to our methods. And I think this is a really important moment of saying, okay, let's release our attachment to the how. Let's start learning some new skills. And then let's see if we can be innovative with the trine to Mercury and weigh the pros and cons of doing it a different way. And that can be how we can start unfolding this full moon, learning something new, releasing our old patterned habit, and then weighing the pros and cons of doing that in a new fashion, right? In a new way, in a new place, a new organizational structure. These are all things that are associated with the first 10 degree sections of Capricorn. Okay. Now, if we look at the next day, that's when we have our Mars Cazimi. So here is our Mars Cazimi on January the 9th. So this is a similar condition that Venus was going through as it stacked up with the sun. You can see all of these planets are stacked up at 19 degrees of Capricorn, and they're all opposing Jupiter here too. So being able to balance out our ambition with the spirit of generosity, with the spirit of doing no harm, with the spirit of creating abundance, and then instead of hoarding that abundance for ourselves, sharing it with others, sharing it with our community. It's not necessarily a message that is popular. I think that this is the real challenge that we have sometimes as people who, I hope, understand that we are unified as a species, as one mind on some level, as one community here on this earth. For people that truly internalize that, the way that the false illusion of separation is very painful, and the narratives that are created from it can be very discombobulating, I guess you could say. And as people who start to understand and really believe in that unity, we have to start creating a new narrative. We have to start creating a new story. Every single manifestation, every single law, every single country, every single act, I think starts with a belief. And I think that when we start changing beliefs and start changing the stories that we tell ourselves and each other, that's when we can start to have different and hopefully more equitable and positive manifestations, more abundant ones. For as much abundance as we enjoy in Western civilization, we have such a bereft of some of the other qualities. We have a bereft of community. We're feeling more and more isolated and lonely than we ever have in, I think, the course of human history. And part of that is a story that we tell ourselves. And when we start telling ourselves new stories, ones of community, ones of sharing, one of the illusion of separation between one another, that's when we, I think, will start to break down those walls that keep us from one another. Now, with this Mars Cazimi, Mars is very powerful in Capricorn. It is exalted. An exalted planet is one where we feel it is an honored guest at that temple. So this is Saturn's temple, Saturn's land. Think about this if we want to use Lord of the Rings as a reference. Let's say Saturn is Gondor, right? And Gondor is this very rocky terrain that's literally built into a side of a mountain. Well, let's say Mars is one of the kings or rulers of Rohan, right? And he becomes an honored guest in Gondor because they are allies, right? He is exalted. He's shown all of the best of what is there because they are going to help one another protect the sovereignty of both of those lands against the forces of Mordor. So think about this as an honor. Mars is an honored guest. The beautiful thing about Mars and Capricorn is the concept of delayed gratification. This is a very patient, strategic Mars that says, I'm willing to do the hard work now for the payoff later. And I want you to pay attention to what types of projects are really capturing your attention at this time, because they may be projects where you may have to plant a seed, do a lot of hard work, and then see the manifestation come later. But you might do that willingly. You might say, I know that this is going to take some time, some discipline. I know this is going to take an organized plan. But I'm willing to do that work because I can see the payoff. I have faith in the payoff. And this is another great way to start a new health regimen as well, because with this decan, we have one of the two kind of daimons associated with health. We had Asclepius and Hygeia here in the second decan, Asclepius in the first decan of Capricorn. And this might be where you're trying to cut something out of your life. Mars is a planet that severs and separates. So you may be cutting out something that is unhealthy for you during this Mars Cazimi. And that could have really positive ramifications for your Scorpio and your Aries topics within your life. So make all of those connections with Mars Cazimi. See what needs to go in your life. See what you need to initiate. And then see what spirit is motivating you to do that hard work. All right, as we keep moving forward, all of these planets, Venus, the Sun, Mars, and Mercury, are going to oppose Jupiter from the period of January 9th, okay, through January the 14th. So this is a 5-day period, okay, where you can see all these periods, all these planets are going in opposition to Jupiter, one by one, okay? It's going to start with Venus, and this is going to happen in the third decans, and then the Sun is going to oppose in the third decans, and then Mars, I believe, is also going to do that opposition in the third decans, but Mercury is going to oppose Jupiter while Jupiter retrogrades into the second decan. So we talked a lot about decans to, I guess, the second decan of Capricorn and Cancer. What are the third decans all about? Well, the third decan of Capricorn talks about taking on responsibility, taking on authority. Sometimes it is associated with the hoarding of wealth and resources. There are themes associated with the King Midas story, where there's the realization that turning everything into a commodity can lead to isolation and loneliness and the lack, a feeling of lack rather than a feeling of abundance. So we're trying to balance with these oppositions with Venus, the Sun, and Mars, that need to take on responsibility, that need to be bold, that need to accumulate resources for the projects that we have, with the need to be generous with those resources, to not be an endpoint for them, to be a circulatory function of that wealth rather than just a mountainous hoard of it, right? With Mercury opposing Jupiter, that's going to happen from that second decan, though, of Capricorn that we've talked about, and the second decan of Cancer. So more so that might be related to ideas around the hubris of our projects, the ambitiousness of our projects, and the community that we need to build to bring them into manifestation. Yeah, packed second house for this chart. Yeah, and if you have a Sag rising, Stephen, like you do, this will be pretty interesting second house manifestation. Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's take a moment here. Let's take a pause for a second, and we're going to do some more unfolding of this. But before I do that, let's take a little stretch break and stretch everything out. And do me a huge favor. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you're new here, welcome. If you're new here and you've been contributing in a way that is kindness is our goal here. Kindness is sort of the thread, and curiosity. Kindness and curiosity, I think, are the thread that and the values of this channel. So if you're new and you've been contributing in that way, welcome, and I appreciate you, and thank you for being here today. If you've been a regular, thank you so much for coming back. It's just such an honor to see you each week and to be able to, I don't know, maybe shine some light on these symbols and maybe be a guide that can maybe help you to have better manifestations in your life, or just to understand what you're going through, whether it's positive or negative. Sometimes when we understand what's negative in our lives, that can help alleviate some of our stress around it as well. All right, friends. And of course, if you want to make a donation to the channel today, you can buy a super chat or go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel there. Appreciate all of your support as well. Thank you to everyone who's been so generous with this channel. It really helps to keep me going, and I appreciate you. Okay. Yes, let's see. So we are looking at, we ended with this kind of opposition stack up with, let's put this back on the screen here, with Jupiter. Now that brings us in the middle of this to the last quarter moon. So here we see on the outer rim of this, the outer ring, I guess you could say, at about 20 degrees of Libra, a square with the sun in Capricorn. And not only is it a square with the sun in Capricorn 3, it's a square with Mars in Capricorn 3, it's a square with Venus in Capricorn 3. This, to me, is a pretty interesting, not just square, but a T-square. And I think that this is the moment, this is January 10th, this is the moment with the last quarter moon where we have to negotiate between sort of the hardened Capricorn parts of ourselves and our vision, and doing the hard work necessary with the desire to create abundance and community for not only ourselves, but for others. And the Libra part of it says there's going to be some compromises that you have to make. You can't just lean into one or the other to the extreme. You know, you're going to have to set some healthy boundaries. You're going to have to take into some practical considerations, some reality checks with the Capricorn part of it. Yes, we want to envision a new economic system, right, that is more just and more fair and more sharing of resources. But the reality is that many of us still live in a capitalistic society where we still have to exchange fiat currency for goods and services. Now, we might be leaning more into a sort of a bartering kind of experience, or sort of a sharing experience, but we have to be realistic that you can't necessarily trade apples to your mortgage company or something like that. Those are some of the realities that we're going to have to balance moving forward between this vision that we have with Jupiter and Cancer and the reality check of all of these other planets stacked up in Capricorn. Now, one of the ways to navigate this gracefully with the moon in Libra. Now, this is a little bit of a funky area of the zodiac. I guess when we are in between 15 degrees of Libra and 15 degrees of Scorpio, that's a place called the Via Combusta, and it's a place that the burned road. So it's a little bit of a difficult place for the moon. But the way that I would navigate this is there may be some choppy waters, but the moon in Libra 3 says, how do you become still? How do you become clear and the eye of the hurricane, right? How do you say, okay, I know that there's a lot of things pulling me in a lot of different directions. How do I become still, like the Four of Swords card, enough to be able to see clearly what the reality of my situation is? How do I bring about the balance of my idealism of emotional support with the practical realities of this winter season of our life, right? So to me, it's a compromise between the two. But you have to get still and quiet before you can hear the voice of your higher self and your wise self to be able to make the best choice possible. Okay. And when we get to the 15th through the 17th, there is a pattern that's going to repeat with Venus and the Sun, and then eventually Mars, okay? And that pattern is one where we see a sextile between the planet with Saturn and Neptune, okay? So in this case, this is let's go to the 15th, and you can just see how this is going to look. Okay, Venus is going to sextile Saturn and Neptune, making contact with that visionary decan that we talked about, the ability to see what we want, but understand the sacrifices necessary, that we are going to have to, what we are going to have to give up to make that real. That's really part of the theme of Pisces 3 is, what are you going to have to give up to make that beautiful vision in the 10 of Cups real? Okay. How do you do that without becoming a martyr to that vision, right? That's another, are you a savior or a martyr? Those are the questions we see in Pisces 3 sometimes, right? And then Venus is going to make a trine to Uranus. So once we get sort of this contact with our visionary quality, we're also going to see this burst of energy, maybe where we say, hey, you know what? Maybe we can do this a different way. Maybe we can do this in a way that is, I don't know what's going on here. So sorry, I got to change this 1 second. I've got a timer on here. There we go. We might be getting a download of information and ways of thinking about something that we really hadn't considered. Uranus is this like flash of awareness, this flash of insight. And with Uranus and Taurus, we might be getting a flash of material insight of how to fix something that might have been broken. That Taurus 3 energy talks a lot about remediation. Maybe we were thinking about something completely differently, and we need to think about it in a way that is a whole new structure of reality, right? Maybe it's through the way we look at time, right there, buddy? So I think that we have to follow those impulses to a certain degree. I think that sometimes Uranus is a liberator, right? It's liberating us from these patterns that we've been stuck in. The other thing that I would offer, though, as a counterbalance to that is I've been reading a lot about Uranus through Liz Green and her excellent book, The Art of Stealing Fire. What she cautions against is this hubristic, that's the key word of this talk today, hubris. The hubris of Uranus with the attempt to be godlike, and how when we try to wield a godlike power, it is often uncontrollable. So this is something that I would caution you towards, is when we're trying to bring something in new that seems too good to be true, that seems divinely inspired, we have to be careful that it doesn't, catch so much fire, right? Let's use the fire metaphor, that it's a controlled burn. rather than one that is just setting everything ablaze, right? I just went for a really beautiful walk at my botanical gardens nearby, Mathi Botanical Gardens in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Beautiful space. Highly recommend visiting it if you ever come to this area. And they had a lot of areas of controlled burn. So controlled burn, if you're not familiar, is when you go out into like a prairie or like a wooded area and you have a set boundary. You have firefighters present, and you burn the old the old plant matter, so that you're creating new life. Fire is a creator of new life, right? Think about volcanoes. When a volcano erupts, it becomes new land, right? It's destructive at first, but it becomes new land. So oftentimes there are particular seeds in nature that can only sprout because of their exposure to fire or forest fires. So forest fires actually play an important role in the cyclical nature of all of these plants and trees, etc. But the controlled burn is important because this allows us to create that renewal without it becoming so destructive and out of control. So when we're using Uranus, and especially with the trine, how do we make Uranus a controlled burn rather than just this raging forest fire that is out of control, that is very destructive? I always ask myself that when I get inspired in a Uranian way. How do I make it a controlled burn? Let's see. Hey there, kia ora, kotu. Greetings, everyone from New Zealand. KT Lady is here. Karen is here. What's up, Karen? Nice to see you. Kia ora to you, friend. I hope you're doing well over on the other side of the planet, experiencing summer over there, which is so mind-blowing to me that we share this planet and we just have completely different seasons. It's such a large sphere. So what a beautiful, beautiful thing. So welcome, friend, and it's nice to see you here. Javiera is here. So sorry, I can only check in for a minute. Hope everyone's having a lovely holiday. Hope you are having a lovely holiday, Javiera. You are a valued member of our community. I'm glad that you're checking in with us, friend. Devin says Mamdani starts his act as mayor by this time. Interesting. So he's, planting the seeds at the Kazimis of new structures, trying to do so in a way that is more communal with his democratic socialism, where he's trying to bring more of a communal structure to New York City, and the challenges that go with that, right? With the power of entrenched belief systems that he's going to need to really work through, right? I'm really curious and fascinated to see how it works out. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and we'll see. We'll see, friends. We're going to have a front row seat for it. Totally, this has been unfolding over a long time. Exactly. Marietta says, remember when I asked if 2026 was a beginning or a completion year? It's a completion year, at least for me. I think the beautiful thing about cycles is that every new beginning is some other beginning's end. So this is both things are true, right? Universally, it's 2026 is a numerical 1 year. So there is some initiating energy with that. But to see a new beginning, we have to accept the endings that we have in our lives. And that's always a delicate balance that we're trying to navigate. Devin says, think of it as rooting time in the breath. When you breathe 4 seconds breath, the ascendant moves 1 arc of minute, or the earth turns 1 arc minute. So when you breathe at that pace, you're breathing with the earth. Ooh, I like that. Alignment with the universal energies. That's what we're trying to do here on this channel too. Okay, so Venus is going through that sextile Saturn and Neptune, trining Uranus, and then moving into Aquarius. So we get some visionary qualities. We get a burst of Uranian fire and lightning, and then we have Venus moving into a sign associated with air, right? With the idealized structures, with the ability to create new law, with the ability to, unfortunately, the other signification that I learned from Joy Usher in A Tiny Universe is Aquarius also has the ability to cast a competing narrative into darkness while only showing a focal point on the narrative that they want you to see. So this is another thing to consider, is as all these planets moving into Aquarius, they're all going to start connecting with Pluto and bringing up some of the inherent corrupting influences of Pluto, the things that have been repressed. What I have noticed since Pluto has been in Aquarius is Pluto can also represent things that we fear. Technology has been something that is starting to be a little bit threatening with like the rise of AI, the data centers, and the surveillance state, I guess you could say, right? Where they're increasing surveillance and all of those things. But I think also what I've noticed with Pluto and Aquarius is the attempts to control narratives. And I think that this is really important to think with all these planets starting to conjoin Pluto, because we're going to see this pattern happening: sextile Saturn and Neptune, trine Uranus, and then moving into Aquarius to conjoin Pluto. The potential for gaslighting, the potential for only showing one side of a story becomes very prominent. And I think that this is something we have to look out for in our own lives too, because we may only try to show one side of a story to other people that we're trying to convince of something as well. So stay open-minded, I guess, and be curious. Try not to necessarily just trust one particular viewpoint. Like, try to see things from multiple angles. I think this is a good way of doing things. Another way to think about this too, like let's say you're trying to get your news from an objective source. Very difficult to do these days. But there is a site that's called All Media. I think it's All Media, All Sides Media. And it shows you like a kind of a political spectrum that the particular story that you're reading comes from. And it has all the same story from multiple different lenses and political spectrum views. And I think that's so valuable, because if you are able to engage with it from multiple perspectives, you can start to see the threads of truth emerge from that, right? And you can start to see when one particular political vantage point is trying to sway you in one direction, and you can pick out the facts rather than the movement towards one particular set of beliefs and views. Okay. Stephen says on January 17th, we'll be in the horse year in Chinese astrology. Will we? Do we have a new moon at that point? Maybe. Yeah. Okay. So the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th, 17th and 18th. It's usually the first new moon of the year. So you might be right on that, Stephen. I haven't confirmed that yet, but I'll have to look it up. Stephen says the 26th Fire Horse is a significant year in Chinese zodiac, starting February 17th. Okay, February 17th, not January 17th, Stephen. February 17th, 2026, bringing powerful dynamic energy for transformation, bold action, innovation, and new beginnings. I thought so. I thought that the new Chinese year usually is around late January, early February somewhere. So it's a good call there, friend. Okay, so a couple more things before we wrap for the day. The sun is going to go through that same pattern that we just underlined there, with the sun sextiling Saturn and Neptune, trining Uranus, then moving into Aquarius from the 17th to the 19th. In the middle of that, we get the new moon in Capricorn. Now, this new moon in Capricorn is significant for this reason. It starts off a Hellenistic void of course moon. Really, really a unique unfolding. And I say that because not only are we having a Hellenistic void of course moon. Now, what is a void of course moon? Generally, a void of course moon is defined as the moon not making any aspects for a certain amount of degrees. In this case, it's 30 degrees across sign boundaries to a traditional 7 planet. So we're not including Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto here. Now, this definition, this Hellenistic definition, is much more rare than the more modern definition of no planetary aspects, but without it crossing sign boundaries. So the interesting part about this is that when we have the new moon in Capricorn, Mercury is going to conjoin Mars. The moon is going to conjunct Venus, the last aspect that it's going to make. And then it's going to be void of course for 86 hours. 86 hours. Okay, that's like 4 days. And generally what people describe the void of course moon as nothing is going to come of the matter, right? It's difficult. Think about the moon as a manifester. And think about like everything that you start during that period of time is somehow corrupted, or it might not actually come to fruition. It's a little bit awkward because we have a new moon in Capricorn. We're trying to plant seeds for a new stable material reality, a new authority. What I will say is that with these seeds that we're planting with the new moon in Capricorn, you just have to be extra patient with it. You may have a new idea at the new moon in Capricorn, but you might not want to take action on it until you get more information about 4 days later, right? So I'm trying to prepare you for that period of time, that void of course moon from the 18th to the 22nd is at that new moon of that cycle. Just be prepared to maybe continue things that you've already started. To be able to maybe, what I love to do during void of course moons, Hellenistic void of course moons, if I tracked all the modern ones, it just happens like every other day. And to me, that ceases to have meaning if it's happening that often. But what I like to do during Hellenistic void of course moons is I like to clean. I like to pick a cluttered space in my house, of which there is always many, like over time. And I like to just clear it out. And I get as far as I get, you know, maybe it didn't get every single thing exactly where it's supposed to be, but the stakes are low. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. I'm getting rid of things. I'm not initiating necessarily something new. So that's the way that I usually do this. I'm kind of earmarking my attic for this period of time. The attic in feng shui is often associated with our vision and hopes for the future. So if you have a cluttered up attic, sometimes seeing what is on the horizon can be a little murky. And that's one that I'm kind of looking forward to, like, oh, I'm going to put this, I'm going to organize this, and maybe that will lead to some better vision, because as above, so below, as within, so without. Sometimes a cluttered external space is reflective of a cluttered mind. Sometimes a cluttered mind can lead to a cluttered external space. And when you try to work with one of those externally, you can sometimes clear up your mind. Sometimes when you clear up your mind, you automatically are like, I got to clear my space up. You know, it's all related. So something to keep our eyes on with that. Okay. So those are the final aspects that I have for you today. We are going to be talking about the new moon in Capricorn in 2 weeks. I'm going to take next week off. I'm going to be kind of doing some reevaluation, taking some time to look at all of everything that's on the channel, hopefully create some new things for you, some new value propositions, some new video ideas, some new 2026 astrological offerings and classes. I do know that I have something in the hopper that is Lord of the Rings related, so there will be a new class coming in early February related to that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Sign up for the newsletter if you want more information about that. And yeah, we'll just ease our way into it. I've got a hexagram and an animal for you before we end today. But before we do that, I'll check in with our chat here. Let's see here. Karen says, clean, now you're speaking my language. Virgo South Node, perfect opportunity, Karen, to just get rid of it all, right? With low stakes, right? Without feeling like we have to succeed in anything. We could just get rid of things, clear the flow, and have a nice new manifestation. Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you for being here today, friend. Rachel says, I'm glad you're taking some time off. Yeah, I think that every once in a while, just being able to clear your headspace, recharge the battery and fill the well, really important. Taking some quiet time. I'm hoping to finish my Charles Eisenstein book, Sacred Economics. I'm going to be probably during that time finishing The Lord of the Rings. We've gone through our journey with The Lord of the Rings as a group. It's been so cool. We started that with The Hobbit in October of 2024, and we'll be ending with the appendices of The Lord of the Rings and by the end of February. And I think we're going to be starting to do the Silmarillion, right? Which will be super fun if you want to learn some of the history of Tolkien and the mythology associated with that world. And yeah, just taking some time off. It's good. Virgo South Node here, Steven says. Megan says, thank you. Have a very good time off. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate you for stopping in and let me know that you're here too. Kai says, thank you so much, Spencer. I always love when I get to listen to your wisdom. You're so grounding and a source of love in the world. Oh, thank you, Kai. You're filling my heart up with such a kind comment. Appreciate you, friend. And same to you. Same to you, friend. And I hope everything's going well your way. All right. So let's talk about this I-Ching to wrap up for the day. What do you say? I got an interesting one. And it's a singular hexagram, no changing lines. It's number 29. Number 29 translates to the abyss. Other words associated: water, darkness, danger, despair, the abysmal, courage and devotion, maintaining faith, pushing through the rapids, getting through to the other side. So the abyss, we're stepping into something new, stepping into maybe a crossing, right? Let's see. I'm going to read you an excerpt from Jack Balkin. It says, water is a symbol of danger in the Book of Changes. When water rushes through a narrow passage, it is quite powerful and therefore dangerous. Similarly, to crossing the great river means to cross the great river means to attempt something difficult and therefore potentially hazardous. Maybe something hubristic, right? Water doubled means repeated danger, like a series of rapids that one must plunge into again and again. They're talking about water because the I-Ching is comprised of two trigrams, one on top of the other. And in this case, we've got a trigram Kan that represents water on top of another one that is also repeating that water symbolism. Okay. Let's see. So water doubled means repeated danger, like a series of rapids that one must plunge into again and again. However, water also symbolizes emotion and more generally, a person's heart and soul. The connection between these two ideas, danger and the soul, suggests the hexagram's central theme. When faced with danger from without, one can escape unharmed if one maintains an attitude of devotion. To survive through a period of danger, one must preserve faith in oneself and in the possibility that one will get through. The Book of Changes teaches that even in the times of greatest distress, one must never lose hope that one can still turn circumstances to one's advantage. One must have faith in the ultimate success, because it is only through having such faith that one can have a chance at ultimate success. To despair is to fall into the abyss. The abyss is symbolized in the hexagram. The abyss symbolized in the hexagram is thus both a physical danger and an emotional state. Thus, one must follow one's heart to ride out the time of danger. To lose heart during such a time means that one does not hold the self together, and this leads to disaster. Now, there's a judgment with this. The judgment's a little poem, a little guiding aphorism, right, that guides us on the journey. It says, repeated abyss. If you are truthful and sincere and follow your heart, then you will have success, and your actions will bring esteem. He goes on to say, we face a difficult and dangerous situation. We can't wish it away. We must rise to the challenge and handle dangers in front of us. Water symbolizes danger, and water also symbolizes the proper way to behave during times of danger. Water is a part of nature and behaves naturally. No matter what happens, it is true to itself. It flows forward without pause. It fills up every place it travels, no matter how lowly. It does not hesitate to move downward in order to move forward. It does not refuse to travel through dangerous places or to take a plunge. It follows its own course, pressing ever onward through rocks and ravines until it reaches the calmness of the ocean. In like fashion, when confronted with difficulties, you must be like water, true to yourself. Move forward without hesitation and not disdaining to do what is necessary to push through the dangerous conditions into safety. The text emphasizes truth and sincerity. It says that you can proceed through danger successfully if you are sincere. To be sincere means first that you are not lying to yourself or deluding yourself. Do not engage in wishful thinking. Accept matters as they are and not as you would like them to be. Equally important, be true to yourself. Understand who you are, what you believe, and what you stand for. It sounds very much like the opposition of Capricorn and Cancer, with a little bit of that Saturn and Pisces energy thrown in, right? For good measure. You know, being true to ourselves and our values and our ideals, but also being realistic, knowing the world that we live in and the game that we're playing. How do we, instead of feeling like we have to change every single aspect of the game that we're playing, how do we understand it and play it in as ethical a way that we can, right? That's as true to ourselves as we can. That's possible sometimes. Sometimes we do have to be game changers. And We don't always have to change everything about the game, but there will be times when we have to step outside our box and rewrite the rules. It can get very exhausting if we're trying to rewrite every rule all the time. I can tell you from experience, like I'm a little bit of a nonconformist. If you haven't already could tell by what we talk about on the channel. But I've learned to choose my battles. And I think that sometimes there is time for change where the universe is receptive to that or to that particular type of change. There's always change happening all the time. Sometimes maintaining a status quo is the important part in that moment as we prepare for the changes that are coming later. So it's a delicate balance. It's a dance, really. It's a dance where we have to learn the right move, the right spin at the right moment. And this is something astrology really helps us with, and divination. And check in with the chat before we reveal our animal here. Okay, let's see. Rachel says, so excited for the Silmarillion. Me too. I'm going to be. Yeah, Rachel's been with us from the very beginning, and we've just been, nerding out with love on all things Tolkien with Rachel and my good friend Carl, and we've Susanna and all my good friends, Robin, have been going on that journey with me. Hope that you all join me again. And you know what, friends, if you're a Tolkien fan, join up for the Silmarillion. This is the mythological lore that permeates the entire universe. Even if you've only seen the movies, there's so much that you can gain from understanding the vast world that Tolkien has created. So that'll be coming in February. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Sign up for the newsletter to know when that launches. Yes, always a pleasure connecting with you, Devin, as well, friend. Happy New Year to you and everyone. Steven says, wow, this is related to something I learned about a great river in China. Oh, good. I'm glad it's resonating. The Great River has the largest river bore in the world. Oh, cool. Marietta says, literally as California is flooding. Oh, boy. Yeah, wishing safety to all of you in California if they're experiencing flooding. Southern California. Okay, gotcha. All right. So here is the animal to wrap up our experience today. So the animal we got is a resilient one that alerts others of danger, but also carries heavy burdens. We got the donkey, right? So here's the donkey. Look at this beautiful ass we have here on the screen. So what I'm going to do, friends, is I'm going to read you an excerpt from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. There you can see Melissa. And Melissa, if you ever come across this, thank you for this beautiful work. I've been doing bibliomancy at the behest of my friend Devin, picking a random number and getting some new animals that I wouldn't normally get just flipping through it, because sometimes we flip through habitually, and the bibliomancy with a random number generator has been really valuable. So donkey symbolizes the willingness to take on the responsibilities of others. Capricorn, anyone? A protective nature and patience. Donkeys are very strong for their size and can carry 20 to 30% of their body weight. They are sure-footed and tend to analyze situations for potential danger, like the abyss, right? Donkey brays loudly to keep in contact with other members of the herd. They are protective and will fight off small predators like a fox, a coyote, or a wild dog, but they can only handle one predator at a time. So they have talents for determination, eagerness to work, endurance. They are gentle, intelligent. They have a kind nature. They're patient, persistent. They have physical strength. They're protective. They are associated with self-preservation, spiritual dedication, versatility, and willingness. Sometimes they have challenges of being loud, noisy, obnoxious, stubborn, and taking on too many burdens of others. When donkey appears, it is a sign of spiritual growth. It is time to embrace and grow your intuition, empathic abilities, and connection to the divine. Donkey means you may be taking too much time in an effort to help others, and sometimes you need to let them stand on their own 2 feet. Donkey warns to be alert in case someone is trying to take advantage of your helpful nature. You are analytical and tend to evaluate situations before taking action. You're cautious and want to make sure the route is safe before moving forward. Like donkey, if you decide a situation is dangerous or could have complications that will directly affect you, no one will change your mind regardless of how much they try to convince you otherwise. This isn't stubbornness, but a keen sense of self-preservation through both analytical skill and intuitive insight. When donkey moves forward, it does so in a slow, calculated manner. Donkey has a solid, stable character and is gentle and kind, but can be fiercely protective. The walled garden, anyone? You share these qualities with Donkey. People often don't expect to see aggressive or protective behavior from you because you're so willing to help other people and are gentle and kind. But if someone you love is in danger, you don't think twice about striking out in defense and loudly making your feelings known. Donkey assists you when you need to say no. You help so many people so often you can get overwhelmed with the burdens you carry. When you need to stop taking on so much and give back some of the burdens to their rightful owners, Donkey will guide you along the right path so you can handle the situation with finesse. If you need a boost of motivation to finish something you've started or to move over an obstacle, Donkey's endurance and determination will see you through. Donkey's strength, persistence, and patience can help get you through projects or jobs you don't really want to do but are necessary. It will lend you its willingness to help you until the task is completed. Donkey warns against being too brash, loud, or overly vocal. Sometimes a few words are all that is needed, and other times silence is best. All right, friends. Wise words of wisdom from Donkey. The thing that I always associate with Donkey now is just what's his name? Eddie Murphy and Shrek. Like, layers. He's like, parfait. You know what's layer? Parfait layers. That's funny, but I digress. Okay, one interesting Donkey symbolism. There are some fixed stars associated with Acellus, right? The Acellus Borealis, and there was the southern and the northern Donkey, and they're in actually Leo, the early degrees of Leo, and they shepherd Dionysus across the desert when he was having difficulty getting through his dark night of the soul, I guess you could say. So having a shepherding quality is a Donkey type of thing too, carrying the burden of others and being helpful, and getting someone out of danger. Really, really good. Okay. Balaam's ass. There you go. Right. Fire. Okay. Marietta says Balaam was going to curse Israel and the donkey. She saw the angel on the path and kept crushing his foot up against the wall to warn Balaam. Yeah, there you go. Shrek 2, right? Okay. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Appreciate all of you. I hope that you had a wonderful 2025. Thank you so much for being a part of the community that we have here on the channel. Thank you to everyone that shows up each week and shares all of their wonderful insights and wisdom. Thank you to everyone who's been able to contribute financially to the channel as well, but also intellectually and spiritually. Appreciate all of you. We all have so many different gifts to give one another. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go visit me over at spencermichaud.com. Okay, you can also find me at social media at Spencer Michaud. Okay, like and subscribe to the video. Do me a huge favor though, this holiday season if you can. Go over to Third Coast Mojo and check out the kind of things that my partner Tanya Andrews has over out there. She's been working real hard, infusing spirit into those beautiful matter, like those beautiful oils, those beautiful soaps. Go also support my daughter at Sag Moon Magic. She's been working really hard this year too. Let's just spread the love with all of our different communities. Support all of your astrological community members. I know there's Kickstarters going on this time of year. Support those Kickstarters. We're all in this together. We're all trying to show each other and light the way for one another. And doing it together as a community can be, it's so much fun doing it together rather than just getting there by ourselves at the top of that mountain and we're really lonely because we've stepped on a few heads along the way. Let's lift each other up to that height and that summit together. That's what I hope for the new year ahead, and that's what I'll leave you with today because it's easier to do this with kindness. So be kind to yourself first, and that will help you to be kind to one another. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. Have a great weekend. Have a great next couple weeks. I'll see you in a couple weeks. We're taking next week off, but yeah, let me know if you need any help. I would be more than happy to work with you and moving into the new year. And take care, friends. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. We'll see you the next time. Peace.